Welcome to your screencast on creating a Google form. The first thing I'm going to point out is that we can get to forms in many different ways. One is by selecting our grid or waffle up here and landing on the Form app. If we go this way, we're put into the land of forms, and we will realize that we have some templates that we can choose from that are sort of pre-designed by Google. So that's one way you can do it. I'm going to close that tab. I'm going to remind you that another way is by simply coming over to the New button, scrolling down and hitting More, and landing on Google Forms. Either way works. I'll just go here because that's where I am. So as soon as you come in, Google Form, an untitled form, will have two zones. It'll have the title area, and it will prompt you to have an immediate first multiple choice question. These are sort of blank right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to title it, and I'm going to call this the Healthy Eating Survey. We're going to start with a survey, and then we'll show you how to make a quiz. And then if I come over here, that should automatically auto-populate as well. And I could certainly have sort of a subtitle. So maybe this is my pre-lesson survey. You don't have to write that in, but that's how you would do it. Then I'm going to click down here to untitled question. And notice the sort of difference. It looks like there's two tiles right next to each other, and that's actually what's going on. So this is my first question tile, and it's blank to begin with, and forms defaults to multiple choice, but we'll actually notice that it's kind of intelligent. It's a little artificial intelligence here. So what is your name? And it realized that I was asking a question, and did you see that it switched from multiple choice to short answer? And I can land on that caret or triangle, and I realize I've got all these different types of questions I can ask. Okay, so I can have, what is your name? Maybe I want this to be like, what is your last name, or what is your first name? And I want it to be required. So I'm going to slide that button over, and that makes it a required response. The form cannot be submitted without that information. Okay, so that's my first thing. Then I see I've got my floating toolbar over here. And I'm going to start with my first icon up here. I'm going to add another question. And now I've got my next tile. My top two tiles got joined. I have my new question title. And I'm going to type in, what is your favorite thing to eat for breakfast? Okay. And it thought I wanted a short answer. But really, I'm going to make this multiple choice. So I'm going to land on that. And I want to have a couple of options, and I'm just going to do these kind of quickly. Cereal, then I'm going to add another one. I'm going to have toast, bagel, bread, right? And I can use the tab button. I can click down here, and I can get all sorts of answers, and I can add as many as I want. It just keeps going from there. And if I decide I don't like one of these, I can just delete it out, right? And I can add something back in, right? And then if I want it to be required, I'm going to come down here and switch it to being required. Okay. When I feel comfortable with that, I'm going to hit my plus button, and I'm going to get another question tile. And as I add them, the previous tiles sort of flow together. But I will point out that when you hover on them, you start seeing those 6 little dots there. And that's how you know you can activate a previous tile, right? Okay, we'll get used to that as it comes through. So that was multiple choice. And when you have something in multiple choice circles, it means the person completing the survey or taking the quiz can only give one answer. But I want to now have, what did you eat today? And maybe they ate more than one thing. So it's not going to be multiple choice or a paragraph. It's going to be check boxes. And I want them to be able to check off more than one thing that they ate today. Maybe they ate like 5 things. Maybe they had, cookies and donuts and fruit. And this might be where we have lots of answers for our person. And so I want them to be able to check everything that applies. So maybe I'm worried that someone will be confused that they can select more than one. So I'm going to come down to my vertical ellipses or my peas in a pod right next to the required button that I've turned on. And I have this option for description. And you'll notice that another line is about to appear. Boom, right there, description. And this is like a note that we can leave for our reader. So I can put check all that apply. Okay, that lets them know it's more than one answer. Okay, so there's my checkbox version. Here's my floating toolbar. Notice that my floating toolbar follows me as I go from one tile to another. There, did it just scroll down? So my next question is I'm going to do a drop-down menu. So I'm going to show that. What is your grade level? And I don't want it to be multiple choice. I want to try that drop-down menu item. And did you see it had some suggestions for me? But I'm going to just go 6th grade, 7th grade, obviously 8th grade, right? So that's a drop down, and I'm going to make this one required. I could have added a description if I wanted to, but I think we're okay. And let's try the next type. So I want to try one of those linear scales. So how important is a healthy breakfast? So again, it figured that out. It's smart. It recognized how important. So I've got a linear scale that I'm selecting, and it automatically defaults to 1 to 5. But you can change that to go all the way down to 0, and then you can go all the way up to 10. So I'm going to label the two ends of my scale. So I'm going to say that number 1 is going to line up with the phrase very important. And number 5 means not very important, because otherwise people get confused. And again, I'm going to say required. I'm going to pause here because we want to see what that actually looks like to the person taking the survey. And so we're going to pop out into what's known as view mode for a minute. So I'm going to come up here to this eyeball, and it's going to let me know what my survey is looking like to a responder, right? So there's my title. It's a pre-lesson survey. Your name has the asterisk because it's required, because I turned that on. What is your favorite thing to eat for breakfast? I get the circles for multiple choice. What did you eat today? Check all that apply. That means I could check more than one of these. What is my grade level? Here's my drop-down box. That's what it looks like. And then the last one we just did was the linear scale. How important is a healthy breakfast? It filled in the numbers for me with very important at this end and not very important at that end. So this is what my survey is starting to look like. And so that let me just see it. And I can now go back to editing it by clicking on the pencil button up here. And it'll take a second to reload. And here's my survey in edit mode. Okay, and I'm going to scroll down, right? And here's the last tile that I was on. Oops, that didn't take when I clicked it. And I'm going to add another question. And this time, I'm going to do one of the grids. So how often do you eat the following items for breakfast? And again, did you see how it sort of started figuring out what my question was? Okay, so I'm going to have a multiple choice grid. We're going to do the checkbox grid in a minute. And so I have rows and columns, and this one is always kind of hard for me to figure out. So my rows are going to be my choices of food items. So, you know, how often do you eat the following things? I'm going to have a long list here. Let's get a couple more in there. Toast. What else do people eat? Eggs, donuts. Okay. So those are all my choices. And my columns are going to be how often do they eat these things. So column 1 is going to be every day. Column 2, maybe I'm going to put that as 1 to 2 times a week. column 3, once a week. And then, I don't know, maybe never. And so again, I'm going to make this required, and I want to make sure people know that they can only answer one per row. So mark one per row. So let's take a look at what that looks like. What does this end up looking like for our viewer? So we are familiar with the survey, and here's what a multiple choice grid looks like. So do you eat cereal every day, 1 to 2 times a week, once a week? Oh, that's a little redundant. Never, right? So I realize that's not the best 2 columns right there. But that means that they can't mark more than 1 per row. They can only mark 1 in a given row. If they try to mark it twice, it doesn't let us do that. So that's what a multiple choice grid is 1 per row. Okay, let's go back to edit mode, and let's figure that out a little bit. And so I also wanted to come back and edit that from once a week to there. I want to say like every day, 1 to 2 times a week. Maybe I want to have it less than once a week and then never. So maybe I edited that. Okay. In contrast to a multiple choice where you can only pick 1 per row, we're going to next do the one that's a checkbox grid. And so my question for this is they're going to be able to answer more than one thing. So maybe this is, when do you eat the following items? And so I'm going to think that, cereal. I think about my son who eats cereal for every meal and every snack, right? Bread. Then I have something like fruit, maybe eggs. Maybe, I don't know, I'm going to go with milk. So these are my rows. And then I'm thinking about, when do you eat these things? Is it a breakfast food? So my son would put that for cereal. Is it a morning snack? Is it lunch? Only I can spell that correctly. Is it afternoon snack? Is it dinner, right? And so again, this is going to be checkbox. And this time I'm going to add a description that says check all that apply. And so we'll just sneak over into preview mode just to show you what that looks like. Scroll down. And here's our multiple choice grid with circles. That's how we know it's only 1 per row. Our checkbox would allow us we could check cereal for, all 5 meals a day, and we could leave eggs totally blank or something. So checkboxes allow you to have more than one answer in a given row. Okay, we're almost done with our model. And so I'm going to come down. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get my little rolling toolbar activated. I'm going to hit question, and it's going to say, this is going to be a short answer. What is your favorite thing to eat for breakfast? And I want a short answer, 1 or 2 words, a sentence at most. Again, it's required. I'm going to do that. I'm going to add another question just to model. Are you a healthy eater? Why or why not? It's not multiple choice. And notice the why or why not triggered the paragraph. That means we're going to have room for a longer answer. So again, that was all the different question types except date and time. And so if I add in something like date, so we could do that, or time, right? So for this one, I would literally just land on date, and I would do something like today is, and then I would select date. Okay, so this is my survey so far, but I realized that I somehow, my name isn't up at the top anymore. It's not in the right place. Never fear. We can move our question tiles around. We do that by sort of selecting that little 6 ellipses and then dragging it to where we want it. So what is your name? Maybe I want today is, and I get that tile activated, and then I hold and drag up, and I decide where I want that to be. Maybe I want the healthy eating question. I want to drag that one all the way down. Oops, I didn't quite get it all the way down to the bottom. So I can absolutely reorganize my tiles after I've created my quiz.